Hello YouTube. Today I wanted to cover my first roll of film run through my working Stereo Realist camera. This is not it. This is my parts donor and experimental camera. But it's the exact same camera. I'm going to show you the pairs of images in slideshows at some point during the video, so you can actually see what I'm talking to you about. Functionality, the camera performed perfectly. Everything worked right. If you're going to take one of these out into the field, bear in mind you're going to be frustrated because there's a series of things you have to do in order to make one of these cameras do what they do. It's not like the old or the more modern cameras where you just advance the film and you're ready to go. There's a series of steps, and they will befuddle you, to say the least, your first couple of times out. These are some pairs that I've already put on cards, and I'll show some closer images of them. There were a couple of things wrong with this process. One, my skill level. At one point in time, I did quite a lot of developing, and I was no expert, but I was fairly proficient at it. So with that in mind, I went out to a small town near me, used up a roll of film, and there were a couple of things wrong. One, it was a cloudy day, which I wasn't really wanting. It was overcast, fully overcast, and I was working with Ilford Delta 100 film, which I'm not very familiar with that. I'm very used to Kodak's 400. It's an old film, it's tried and true. It's very forgiving, got a lot of latitude. The next thing I did wrong was I developed the film myself, and there again, I know how to do it, but I'm not proficient at it. And some of I developed, I think, 4 rolls that day, and not all of them came out for any number of reasons which could be imagined. But I did get some good usable images. This is one. It's a little dark, a little underexposed. However, the image quality is good, the focus is good. I did notice with my camera that the focus is off just a little bit. And if you could see these as clearly as I see them, you would see the focus is not crisp. It's pretty close, but it's not crisp. So I've got to do a test with ground glass at the back of the camera and find out exactly where my focus point is. In a previous video I talked about these aftermarket depth of field scales. I will never put another one on any of my cameras, and if I can, I'll replace the ones that are there with originals if I can ever find one. So I've got to find the actual focus point with the cameras. As I said, my development skills are lacking. I haven't done it enough these later years to be as proficient as I was, but I did yield some usable images. And another problem was because I processed them myself. I wound up having to use, I think these are 3x5s. I don't have of course I don't have a measuring tool right handy. I think they're 3x5s. In any event, the images on the film come out a little bit smaller than 35mm. I think they're actually 23 by 24, I think is what their frame size is. So you get a mostly square image. And so I had to use my 3x5 cut film, or cut paper, to get these images. Now, these two are not a good example. This one is dramatically overdeveloped. This one is a little underexposed. And going through the process, it was a little bit of a struggle along the way, but I'm not dissatisfied. The camera worked. The images, most were usable quality, although they were not high end. And that is, I have to say that's me all the way. Another mistake I made was when I had my light meter set. I had it set for an ASA of 125, not 100, so there was a slight variation in actual meter reading as opposed to what the meter reading should have been. So, also, if you want to do stereo photography and you don't happen to have a stereo camera, incidentally, all of mine came off of eBay. They're not terribly rare, although some people think they're made of gold. If you can get one of these that's expected to be in working condition for in the neighborhood of 30 bucks, you're doing all right. That being said, the other thing I want to show you is, before I get into close-ups of the images, if you want to do stereo photography and don't have a stereo camera, there are, if you can find them, aftermarket doodads like this, which is called the Radx Stereo Parallel, and it's a little gadget like that. And the way this thing works, I'll show you very quickly here. This part goes on your tripod, because you got to have a tripod, and then you take your busted Zorky 4, you mount it, so I can do this like I actually know what I'm doing. If I wasn't trying to rush, this would be easy. Okay, it's not going to tighten up the way I want it to, but that's okay. This is just a demonstration thing. So you tripod, busted Zorky 4 mounted to your Radx Stereo Parallel, and there was a bunch of different companies that made these things. You take your first image, wind the film, shift it over, and take your second image, and then you get two images side by side that have that slight difference in viewing. The difference in from here to here is about the same width as the human eye span, 2.5-ish inches. So there is an option. I got this on eBay. I think I paid 10 bucks for it. So put that back. And it's a nifty little gadget. I want to try this out too, because I've got some cameras. Well, I got a lot of cameras, but I got some cameras that I'm much more familiar with. It might yield me somewhat better results. Okay, next thing I want to cover is I did pair up some of my, I'll make sure my camera's still, yeah, pair up some of the better images I got with the camera, and like I said, I'm going to show you close-ups. Now I've already mounted these on cards, and let me tell you, this is the wrong way to do it. I did them by eye and fiddled around so that they would go into my stereoscope. Let me back this up a little bit. It's not going to back up for me. Alright. This is my stereoscope that I got on eBay. I cleaned it up. I replaced the felt around the face piece, and now I've got some cards that I can put into the stereoscope and the effect is very, very good. These are black and whites. The effect is better in color, but this works. This is the best out of the three. The other two are good, but they're not fantastic because I lined them up by hand, and that's really not how you're supposed to do it. You need jigs. You need to be able to pick foreground points so that everything lines up. They have to be lined up a certain way in order for the effect to be good. Next, I think I'm going to just go ahead and show you some close-ups of the images I got, bearing in mind there were mistakes made mostly on my part. The camera did its job just fine. I was working with a film I'm not familiar with. I was hoping for a sunny day. I got a cloudy day. That's okay. But I would not call it a failure. I would call it a relative success. So now I'm going to show you some close-ups. Alright, so in conclusion, without turning this into a big long, not very useful dissertation, I would recommend that after you shoot up a roll of film, make sure your meter settings are correct, be prepared for the weather conditions, and have somebody else process your film at the very least. If you can do your own printing at home, that's great. I don't have a dark room, so to speak. I have a dark space. I happen to like the dark room out in California. They've done great for me. Printing these could be problematic because of the format size. I haven't checked yet to see if the darkroom even can do stereo format. So I'm going to have to do that in the foreseeable future, because the next roll of film, for one, I would like to be color, and for another, I want to eliminate all the variables, and I was the biggest variable in all of this. So that being said, I wanted to show you a few of the first roll, this little gadget here, and the stereoscope, and I think that's everything I wanted to cover for this trip. So any questions, feel free to ask. And until next